China must feel like the prettiest girl at the school dance. Donald Trump just met with Xi Jinping last week, and now Vladimir Putin is heading to Beijing. Everybody's courting China, asking if they can carry her books home from school. Wall Street watches China obsessively. If China hiccups, Wall Street says, "What was that?" The tiniest thing. They've got their ear to the wall. What's happening over there? American corporations depend on China. Russia needs China for trade and energy. AI companies need China for, manufacturing. Investors hang on every headline coming out of Beijing. So, so what's really happening here? Why does everybody suddenly want to court China? And more importantly, what does this mean for markets, investors, and for the future balance of world power? Underneath all the headlines, something psychological is happening here too. And China has become the must-have relationship in the global economy. And that's like being the prettiest girl at the school dance. Every boy wants his turn. Everybody wants access. Everybody wants cooperation. Everybody wants stability. And nobody wants to be shut out. And this gives China enormous leverage. China knows that it has what everybody wants, right? A lot of things that everybody wants. And one thing that stands out for me is timing. Trump just visited Beijing. Trump was just there. And, Putin arrives shortly after. That's not random. That didn't just happen. Russia desperately needs economic relationships right now with anybody. Russia needs buyers for energy. It needs trade. It needs access to technology, right? How much tech is coming out of Russia? Probably just about that much, right? So it needs access. And having a relationship with China gives Russia some elbow room, some breathing room. Now it can function, but it's gotta have a tight relationship with China to have that. And at the same time, the U.S. also depends heavily on China, especially economically, and Wall Street knows it. I mean, look at AI all by itself. Companies like NVIDIA, Apple, AMD, Tesla, and dozens of others. They all have exposure to China in some form. Manufacturing, supply chains, rare earth materials, consumer demand, geopolitical risk. Investors know that if relations between the US and China deteriorate, markets could react violently. So every meeting matters. Every comment matters. Every photo matters. And psychologically, that creates something fascinating. China increasingly looks less isolated and much more central and much more centrist, much more active with, on the world stage. And that's a major shift from the narrative we heard just a few years ago. Now, pull the camera back. Does this mean China wins? Not necessarily. China faces some major problems of its own. It's got slowing growth, property market stress, demographic decline, youth unemployment, loads of pollution over there that they don't know. What are they going to do with it, How about global distrust? I mean, China has treated some other countries pretty shabbily in the past. You know, I mean, I'm not going to get into that, but I could list them. So when global distrust, do not take that lightly, because that's true too. And yet, despite all this, the world keeps showing up at China's door, hat in hand, asking for the next dance. And I find that part interesting. Markets are emotional creatures, just like us, right? Investors don't react only to earnings. Investors react to power, momentum, positioning, narratives. And right now, the narrative is saying China still matters to everybody, apparently, enormously, and maybe more than ever. Maybe this is one big case of, hey, China, let bygones be bygones. Let's make some money. Let's do some business. Let's trade, you know. And maybe that's the real story here. Because it's not whether China is perfect and the best, most, widely regarded, upstanding country on the planet. Nobody's saying that. But the real story might be whether the global economy has become far too interconnected that anyone involved in it can walk away from it. It can't be done. The world has become too small. It's too small, and which means that everybody now, they better get along. They better get along. Anyway, these are just thoughts for now. Trump was in there first. Now here comes Putin. And we'll see how all that goes. I'll see you next time.